All right. So, welcome to learning how to calculate how much glass you need in your mold. In the magical cooking show style of these demos, I have another mold that has been pre-steamed for us. This came out of the steamer this morning, so it's still pretty nice and imbued with water. Ideally, I'd like to do this calculation right when this mold comes out of the steamer, but a few hours isn't going to hurt me. So what I first want to show you is what the mold looks like when it's totally come out of the steamer and all of the wax is gone. You can see that the mold is still sort of stained with some wax, but it doesn't have enough wax where when I drag my fingernail gently across that I can drag any wax out. It's just a little bit of a stain. And also, I don't know if you can see in the camera, but I either use my eyes, or if it's a small enough hole, I'll use a flashlight on my phone to just look at the bottom of the mold. And if I can see that there's any wax left in there, I know I'm not done steaming. This one's looking pretty good, so we're ready. Materials that you need to grab for, this is gonna be too small, for calculating the amount of glass that you need are a gram scale. We have a few of them above the mixing station. You're going to need your mold, obviously, and then a bucket that will be full of water, and you need to fill this bucket with more water than what we'll fill the mold with. That will become clear in a moment. So just know that I think this bucket is going to be too small. So I think that this volume will probably fill this mold and leave very little water, if any at all, left. So I need more water than what that affords me. And then I'm also just going to have a little piece of scrap paper and a pen to take some notes on. And I also need a calculator. So I'm gonna have my phone. I bet you didn't think you were gonna have to do math in art class, but you do. Tricked ya. So what I'm going to do is that I'm just gonna fill this bucket up all the way with water. So I have my amount of water. I've turned my scale on and I've set it to 0 grams. Make sure that the amount that you're measuring is in grams. These scales have a few different settings. So you can click through on this one. You click through the unit button until it says little g next to the 0. Zeroed out. And I'm going to weigh my water. My water is 2,086 grams. I made a note of the original weight of water, and now I'm going to pour water into my mold until it fills it up to the top, and then I'm going to weigh what remains. So what remains is 1,565 grams. And then I'm going to subtract that to get the number of grams of water that's in my mold. And I don't need this water anymore, so I can dump it out so I'm not further imbuing my mold with water. Oops. All right, so for both ease and accuracy, I'm going to literally subtract these two numbers with my calculator. I said you had to do math. I didn't say you had to be good at math. Use your tools. 2,086 grams, that was my original bucket, minus 1,565 grams is 521 grams. That is the amount of water that filled this mold. I can get rid of that, I don't need you anymore. All right, we're gonna walk over to the whiteboard where I've written the very important, what's the word? Calculation that you're gonna need to calculate how much glass you need. So let's walk over here. I know Madeline could do like a really beautiful job of putting this text overlaid on the video, but I also thought it might be nice where you can just pause your video right now and take a note of this in your sketchbook or in your phone. So, calculating how much glass you need to fill your mold. This is your equation. So, blank grams of water for us is 521 times 2.5. 2.5, you don't really need to know what that number is, but if you're a nerd, a materials nerd, I love you, you're great. You can know that that number represents the specific gravity of the glass that we use for casting. So it's like the density of our glass. So the grams of water times 2.5 will equal the grams of glass that you need. So let's do that math. Good to have pockets in my big ugly smock. Clearing that out, 521 times 2.5 equals 1,302.5. 1,302.5. So now we know that going back to our gram scale, we are going to measure out this weight in glass. Is that all we're going to do? No, there's one more thing. We are going to add 10% more to that number. So that is 130 extra grams. And that is because when we cast our glass, we use flower pots, and you'll see that in a second, but there's going to be a little bit of a residue of glass left in the flower pot, and so we are going to add a little extra glass to compensate for what the flower pot steals. One more thing. If you are making really small molds, you're going to add a little bit more than 10%, maybe 20% more. And this is because we are going to add top pressure, and which will aid in the viscosity of glass. And I can talk to you more about that. Just know that the rule will be 10% more to your number unless you're making really tiny things, and then 20% more. It's a little counterintuitive, but trust me, you'll be happy in the end. All right, let's go measure our glass.
Go.
All right, so the glass that we're going to use is System 96 Studio Nuggets. This is a fairly good casting glass, and we have ample amounts of it, so you should feel free to use as much as you like. It's going to live in these robust plastic bags, and we are going to tear open the bags, and we are either going to carefully, with our bare hands, grab the nuggets out or throw a glove on if you're concerned at all about getting cut. They are not sharp like broken glass, but they do have some sharp edges. So just be aware that when you reach your hand in there, you're not reaching your hand into like a bag of kittens. Or maybe you are, right? It's like a bag of kittens who are a little angry and they might scratch you. So just be careful and the kittens will be nice to you. Look, 3 kittens that were nice to me. Before I put them on the scale, this scale is dirty, and instead of doing like a whole squeaky clean, I'm just gonna put a clean piece of paper or paper towel down in service of not making my glass any dirtier than it already is. So I'll grab a piece of paper towel. And then I'm gonna turn my scale on. And again, I'm going to make sure that it is in grams. And I'm going to look at my calculation, and I know I need 1,302.5 plus 10%, so that's 1,605. I'm gonna write that down. I don't have to remember. I have a pen and a piece of scrap paper. 1,605 grams. Scrap paper, coming in handy. Carefully reach into the bag of kittens, don't anger them. and then pile your glass on here. I've clearly made a mistake. I'm never going to be able to pile 1,600 grams of glass on here without it spilling off. So I'm just gonna lift this off, put a container. It's clean. I specifically picked a clean one, but if you don't pick a clean one, clean it first. I'm gonna zero it out so I'm not weighing for the cup. And then I'm just gonna load stuff in here. Go to 0. Thank you. Sometimes you have to be assertive even with inanimate objects. All right, we are at 380. We are not looking for exact, so if you are close but under, add another nugget. If you are close but over, you're in good shape. All right, we are at 935. $11.28, getting close. $12.65. 1,400. 15.37. This is getting exciting. 15.90. Don't anger the kittens. 16.65. I'm looking for 16.05, so I'm a little over. That's 1,600. Mwah. I'm gonna call it good. The reason that I didn't go any more over than I need to is that I know what's going on in this mold, right? This is the nose attached to the cup, and it has a very big void here, a very big sprue. That extra glass that isn't my object is going to help push the glass down, but I'm not gonna be sad if this part doesn't fill all the way to the tippy top, because this isn't my object. I'm gonna end up cutting this part off anyway. All right, we are so close to loading, to going to the next stage, but there's one more thing we're gonna do. We are going to clean the glass. Who knows what was on my hands? Where have you been? Who knows what was on other people's hands when they reach in here? We are using a glass that is sort of an all-purpose glass for many different functions in the glass studios, which means that it's sort of not necessarily formulated to be perfect for casting. So it's sort of a good catch-all. It's good for casting, but you do have to be a little bit more careful with it for the castings to come out nicely. And all that extra care means is that you don't want to put dirty glass into the kiln, because it's more likely to create an effect called devitrification. I know I've talked to some of you about devitrification, but I'll just give like the world's briefest and least scientific overview of devit, and then you can decide to avoid it. Devitrification is something that happens to glass when it's in a very specific temperature range, and it's called seeding. So if there is like a little unwanted criminal in your glass called dust, or like a nasty fingerprint or some oil clay, we don't want to invite them into our molds, because what could happen is as the glass is cooling down from top temperature, there's this range where any of those unwanted characters will start to bloom a crystalline structure. It's like making candy, if you've ever done that in your kitchen. If you don't wash down the sides of your sugar bath, if any little bit of unmelted sugar pops into your melted sugar, snap! It goes into this crazy crystalline structure. Very similar to glass. It can inhibit the flow of glass, and it could also give you this like kind of dirty, greasy surface that you cannot clean off. You actually have to mechanically cold work it off. So decide whether or not that matters to you, decide that it matters to you, and then clean off your nugs. I have some clean water here from before, and I'm just going to pop my nuggets off. I'm gonna wash my hands, and then I'm just going to, one by one, wipe them down and put them back into another clean vessel. If you are not certain about your hand cleanliness, you can also just put rubber gloves on. So we're gonna pause the video so you don't have to watch me literally wash glass, and I'll be back in a second to show you how to load the kiln.